Post-World War II era led to a boom in wealth and prosperity in North America. With this came a strong sense of optimism and stronger reliance on technology to make our lives easier, safer, and cleaner. Technological advancements increased our ability to produce foods and goods, which led to an increase in consumption in the 50s. Slowly, however, concern for environmental issues was rising, and after 1960 sharply increased. Growing environmental awareness led to fears of scarce resources, global overpopulation, and stalling food production that would lead to cataclysmic population decline. This led to a global movement to curb population growth that would erroneously target mostly poorer nations around the globe and sparked an ongoing debate surrounding the ethics of overpopulation. The fears of overpopulation were largely stoked by a book provocatively titled The Population Bomb. Written in 1968 by Stanford biologist Paul R. Ehrlich and his wife Annie, though she was uncredited. The book outlines various scenarios of global overpopulation and food shortage, resulting in inevitable population crash. The Ehrlichs observed that birth rates exceed food production capacity, the projected global population will only place a strain on natural systems, and they reached the conclusion that we must rapidly bring down the population growth rate. The book echoes the work of Thomas Malthus, whose 1798 essay on the principle of population argued that food production grew in an additive fashion, whereas population grows exponentially. This led Malthus to the conclusion that we would reach a crisis where those two growth rates intersected. The population bomb attributes population growth as a primary cause of environmental degradation and famine. The book was highly influential, and its alarmist tone did not go unheeded. The Ehrlichs' ideas sparked the movement of neo-Malthusianism and informed population control measures internationally, which were in practice adopted by countries with higher birth rates, which often meant countries with lower incomes. Many population control measures were extreme and atrocious, ignoring individual rights to self-determination, and often individual participation was non-voluntary. Given the alarmist tone of the book, it is unsurprising that these policies were extreme, and invariably top-down in their administration, with those in power forcing or otherwise coercing adoption of these measures. Measures such as World Bank loans contingent on population planning policies, voluntary and involuntary sterilization programs, and China's one-child policy. These policies failed to show understanding of the political and cultural circumstances surrounding high birth rates, such as issues of wealth distribution, access to education, and reproductive rights in healthcare, and instead asserted control over reproduction through hegemonic means, with justification rooted in ideology rather than human rights. The general trend we've seen, however, is that one of the most effective ways of decreasing birth rate is investing in women's education. In her 1987 book, Reproductive Rights and Wrongs, Betsy Hartman critiques the population control movement, arguing that it mistakenly attributes the scarcity of resources to primarily population growth and fails to incorporate how consumption of resources varies. For instance, the demographic transition is a model developed to understand how population dynamics change as a country develops economically. It looks at a country's birth and death rates and how that affects total population over time. Population starts low and birth and death rates high, and then with medical advancements, death rates decrease rapidly. But there's a delay in birth rate decline as cultural change takes longer, so there's a period of rapid population growth. But as birth rates also begin to decrease, the population eventually stabilizes. In 1968, the Ehrlichs were talking about measures to more rapidly shift these rates, but we're talking from a population that had already achieved that stability. And what is not represented in the demographic transition is consumption, and with increased development comes increased consumption. And this heterogeneity in global patterns of consumption is not sufficiently addressed in the population bomb. It ignores cultural differences in attitudes towards children and different cultural values in social environments, such as cultures that rely on children as a form of social security. It ignores differences in gender, race, class, and therefore cannot account for how different measures would apply to different genders, races, and classes. The overpopulation movement highlights the need to consider how social stratification and individual differences can help to solve large-scale global problems. This kind of intersectional thinking, though more nuanced and complex, can unearth novel and effective strategies that address the underlying cause of a problem rather than only the symptom.